everybody here? I guess the ones we're missing are going to say anything.
If you aren't here, stand up.
All right, welcome to PBS. My name is Monty Browning. I've already met several new PBS members since we've been here, and that's pretty nice. It's always nice to see new members. It's an amazing thing that every time I get up here in front of you guys, I find more and more gray hair. We're getting old. So it's nice to get some new guys. I got, how great to have friends, and how great to have friends since I know nothing about computers. And it's not likely to learn much in the next few years. But for Brian Burkhart to come up and help me, he just happened to have a laptop, which we needed, which I didn't have, and he helped me straighten out some stuff on this thing this morning. So hopefully we can get through this. Some of you have probably seen this at Compton last June. If you go to Compton next week in Florida, you'll get to watch part of this again. So Dennis told me that there would be a different crowd down there, so you could just go ahead and do it over again. So anyway, somebody said they were just looking for speakers, and I said they're just out of speakers. So we get to do it. Some of us get to do it again. All right, this is the actual idea about this seminar. Hopefully, will be something a little bit different. You all hunt. A lot of you bear hunt, and but this is my passion. All right, my passion has always been getting as close to as possible to big and dangerous game. I don't know why. It's just the way it is. And I don't know if it's possibly being a tree topper for 42, 43 years now. I'm not much of a risk taker. I'm just a thrill seeker, I guess. So anyway, I've always liked getting close to big animals. Always. I don't know why, but I've always liked it. So I put together some slides and a few stories. We'll go through these. I want to have a show of hands. How many of you guys have hunted Alaska? I know it's a lot of you. How many of you have seen grizzly bears in the wild? How many of you have been charged by grizzly bears? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's more than I thought. That's actually more than I thought. How many of you enjoyed it? Let me tell you something. You watch it on TV, it's totally different. And it's one thing to have a bear come loping down a ridge. That's not a charge. I like that. You know, that's a great way to get good photographs and good video footage. It's a little bit nerve-wracking, but usually when the bear's coming, his ears are forward and he's loping down like just to read the menu. He's got you confused with something like a caribou or something like that. You will know. Those of you who have been charged by a grizzly, you know when that bear is serious. There's no doubt in your mind, and you will know then that you need to do something different than you've been doing. So I know I was in Alaska when Brian had this bear come rushing up to him, and I tell you what, I've been right where that bear came up that bank to him. He wouldn't have had time to think about what he was going to do, but at least he got the bear spray out. So let's go through some of these and we'll talk about some of these. I've got a number of pictures of grizzly bears because that's one of my favorite animals on the face of the earth. I think when God created grizzly bears, he had me in mind because there's everything about them I like except the way they run toward you. All right. These are all big bears. The valley we hunt, I've hunted up there. And if he doesn't know why, I can promise you I don't know why.
Not staying on the screen.
That's what it means with projector connection up there.
Yeah, it's the HDMI.
This is typical September colors in Alaska. I know the first time I went to Alaska, I was so fascinated with those little red leaves. You know, I took pictures of them, and every time I come home, I'd have all these slides, and I'd tell my wife, I said, this is what makes the tundra look red. And she heard that so many times. She finally said, stop taking pictures of those. Oh, that's a big bear. So anyway, I haven't officially hunted grizzly bears, you know, the interior grizzlies, because I don't like guided hunts. I did have to have a guided hunt on the brown bear hunt, and I was fortunate enough to take a very, very large brown bear on that hunt at like, I think the actual distance was 5 yards. And that's an eye-opener right there. But dangerous animals, here's what I want to share with you, mostly. Dangerous animals are all alike. I don't care if it's a Cape buffalo, it's a brown bear, or interior grizzly. I don't care what it is. When you get as close as I like to get, you're in what I consider the zone, and that zone is an invisible circle around that animal. And when you get within that circle, it doesn't matter. That animal knows you're there. I've seen it and seen it and seen it. He knows you're there. If you've got the wind, he can't smell you. He can't see you. He can't hear you. And he'll try everything, but he knows you're there. And that's where I get excited. When I get into that personal zone of that animal, it's just like when you were in grade school. The teacher can see out of the back of her head. I know the ones that got in trouble. Because I was one of them. And but that's that zone. And when that animal lifts its head, and you can hear it breathing, you're that close. That is a great, great feeling. And the sad part today is that so many people, especially with compound hunters who have just gotten into the sport, they've seen all the videos, they've seen the TV shows, and they think that's the only way you can do it. They have no idea. When you shoot an animal at 35, 40, 50 yards, that animal may not even know you exist. And as far as I'm personally concerned, not just me personally, and I know it's Brian too, we don't get excited. Yeah, that's a beautiful moose, that's a beautiful bear, that's a beautiful animal. We don't get excited until you get to that distance where you know, now this might happen. And that's what I hunt for, that's what Brian hunts for, and that's what so many of you hunt for. So I just want to share some of this. How many of you have hunted brown bears? Not too many. You know how big these animals are. And there are people that will tell you that brown bears aren't nearly as aggressive as interior grizzlies. I would agree with that, except for the ones that are aggressive. And, and they'll let you know which ones they are. This bear, I know most of you have probably heard this story, but this bear, I was hunting with a guide, which I didn't want to do, but it's a good thing. I wouldn't have gotten the bear if I hadn't been with this guy, because I didn't know the country, didn't know what I was doing really. And this bear, I shot this bear like 5 yards, and this guide had never taken a bow hunter, ever. He had never seen an arrow shot at an animal, and he was very, very skeptical. And fortunately, I had about 10 days to talk to him about what bow hunting was. And when the first arrow he ever saw shot at a game animal, he watched it go 5 yards into that bear and just vanish in the hair there. It impressed him so much. The bear went 80 yards, and we figured it was dead in 7 seconds. It impressed him so much that he started collecting bear takedown bows and building bows and bow hunting. You know? So, I mean, I know preachers that can't convert people that quick. And I'm sometimes one of them. That's good. All right, this is a video. This is what you don't want to walk up on, and I've walked up on this before. When a bear is on a kill, that's the most dangerous. That and getting between the sow and cubs, and we'll talk about that a little bit too. This is video from a friend of ours in the same valley. He is in a tree stand, and he's videoed. He's killed. He or his wife wanted to kill a moose. It's in the background. If you look back behind that antler, there you go, right back there. That's a big interior grizzly on burying a kill. The moose carcass, and this moose walked up between him and the bear on this carcass. And that's kind of a surprising video because that moose knows that bear is there, and they are just mortal enemies. And it didn't take finally the bear did some moving and the moose went on. But that bear, Brian has seen this bear. I've seen this bear up close. We know this bear pretty well. That one and about 3 others that we see in that valley. That could be the one that took your moose. All right, is that working? Yeah. In case you get that close to a bear, that's what he'll do to you after he kills you. He'll bury you just like that. And the amazing thing with those claws, they rip those alder bushes and those blueberry bushes and dwarf birch. They rip all that out by the roots, and they'll clear. I've seen an area cleared as nearly as big as half this room just to cover up one moose. I'd like to get one of those in our farm in Georgia just to clear the underwood. We actually did that at our farm. We had a creek that had a high bank about this high, and I couldn't get my tractor on the back side of the farm. So we were back there, my wife and I and Annie, and I said, I know how to get this bank dug down. So I went to the house and got a 50-pound bag of corn and a post hole digger. Went back, took an axe and cut all the roots, 9-foot wide section, cut all the roots, dug 3 holes, poured corn in it, put dirt back in, scattered some on the bank, dug 3 more holes back, and the wild pigs came in and rooted the whole bank off. Then they packed it going up and down the bank, and every week I throw more corn and dig more holes, and they dug that whole thing out, made a great spot. But the bear could have done that in one trip. It really is amazing to watch these animals feed. Brian had a grizzly. It very well could have been this same bear. You might have seen some video from it on his moose carcass in 2015, I think it was. That is awesome nature right there. These you know, when a bear looks at you, I've heard a lot of people say that bears don't have good eyesight. I promise you, a bear's eyesight is better than anybody's in this room. They just don't have many natural enemies, you know. And when I was a kid growing up, you know, I didn't look at people the way some people did because I didn't have many natural enemies either. But these bears can see plenty well. As long as they're looking for movement, and as long as you're still, you can get by with it. But this is what you don't want to see. There's one coming like this. After I killed my moose up there in 2018, I wanted some footage of a grizzly working on a carcass. So I knew where the carcass was, but it was in an area I hadn't gotten very familiar with at the end of the ridge where Brian usually hunts. And so I decided, I knew the bear was there because the ravens weren't landing at the carcass. So I knew he was there. And so I told Brian was going hunting that morning. I said, I'm just going to take a video camera because I want some good 4K video of a bear working on a carcass. So I went up around.
What did I tell you?
Be careful. Yeah. My mother said the same thing. Yeah. And I said the same thing to him. I'm always careful. So I made a big circle around, and it's a real frosty morning, and I get up and get some rock cliffs back up there, and the sun hasn't got over yet. And so I'm walking around these things, and I've got a 44 Magnum pistol, and I've got my bear spray that I've never actually tested, but I had total confidence in. And I tell everybody, nothing can withstand that bear spray. That is powerful stuff. So I go up and I make a big circle and I get way up above these rock cliffs, and I know that carcass is down here, but I've never been up there before, and I couldn't tell if it's right over here or if it's right here, and the cold air is coming down, and so my scent is drifting down. So I came back this way toward camp, probably 3/4 of a mile from camp, and so I come back this way and to where I think I'm good. And I walked out of the sun is just coming up behind me, and there's a yellow line of light from there down on the rest of this ridge. And it's brush and open areas about this high and mixed spruce trees. And so I've got this 44 Magnum pistol that the clip on the holster had broken the day before when I was packing the moose rack out. So I had stuck it down in the top of my backpack because I'm not going to need it because I'm such a good hunter. I know where this bear carcass is and I won't need this pistol, so I just stuck it down in my pack. Don't ever think something like that. So I got my bear spray and I'm easing down and I'm thinking that the carcass is right here and my scent's drifting over here. As it turned out, the carcass was right there and my scent was drifting straight to the carcass. And so I'm easing down, and just as I got into that yellow light, I heard a noise, and I turned my head and looked. It sounded like a big animal busting through the brush. And the first visual I had was that big bear. He's probably, what do you think that bear weighs? Good 600, 5 to 6. It's a big interior grizzly because he's been eating moose on a regular basis. This is a huge interior grizzly. That bear comes, he just launched himself out of the brush in a dead run. Now they can catch a racehorse out of the stumps. They can outrun a horse for the first 100 yards or so. If that's for me, tell them I'm working. So he comes out and he's this high off the ground in the air, and the sun is right in his face. That is the most horrifying thing a bow hunter is probably ever going to experience. And he's 40 yards, he's coming up the hill, and it's just beautiful. The long hair, every time he hit the ground, the hair would shake on him, just drop down like this and shake, and the sun is gleaming. I can see the brown in his eye, and he's got his ears flattened back, coming straight at me, and the tongue is, I can see his tongue, I can see the black and the pink on his lip, and his tongue is out, but his lower lip, you know the way it comes down, a kind of a prehensile type lip, the lip is flapping down. And flap. Every time he hits the ground, it flaps and it flaps back up. I've never seen that before. I'm fascinated by it. But just for a second. And the first thing, my heart went right through my throat. My temperature went up. I'm telling you what, it scared me to death. Because that's not the time to test your bear spray. And so I grabbed the bear spray out, I thought about the pistol, and he's already made about 3 bounds. I get the bear spray out, and something in my head, God says, ain't working, Brownie. I grabbed the bear spray and pulled it out, and something said, you will never stop this bear with this bear spray. It's just not going to work. And I knew it wouldn't work. I knew in my heart that it was not going to work, and the bear's still coming. And he's coming, and the next thing I know, I've got both hands in the air, the bear spray in his hand, and I'm charging the bear, screaming at the top of my lungs, hey bear, hey bear! And I'm running at him. And I'm running down the hill, and at 20 yards, he breaks to his left. And he's looking at me, and that lip is still flapping, and he does a dive to the left, and he just vanishes in the brush, and it's over just that quick. And it's just like, thank you, Lord, thank you, Lord, thank you, Lord. Pack off, and I got the pistol out, and I felt like Barney Fife. I got the pistol in one hand, and the hammer's cocked back, and I got the bear spray in the other, and I'm looking in every direction, and I'm telling you what, I can't breathe. I didn't know I could get that scared, and that's happened to me before. And I'm looking, and nothing happens, and I back up, and I finally get my pack on, and I don't hear anything, and I'm thinking, I can't call Brian for 45 more minutes to tell him I just nearly had a heart attack. We got our radios, we turn them on once an hour just to see what's going on and turn them off again. So he's not going to hear me. Nobody knows where I am except God, so I start walking to the left. Well, here comes a raven. These ravens, it wouldn't fly down to the carcass because of the bear. The raven flies, the first one flies up, does a 180 right over my head looking down at me. And he flies over here and lands in the top, the little spindly top of about a 40-foot spruce. And he's standing up there looking at me. And then the next raven flies up and he lands in one. Then there's 5 ravens in 5 different spruce trees looking at me in the semicircle. Now, what I just went through was scary enough. This is strange. I have never seen anything like this. And I said, a lot of help you were, out loud, a lot of help you were. And I said, I got to talk to somebody. And so I started my way back to camp, and I looked over my shoulder at least 100 times. And I get back to camp, made a pot of coffee, and I drank the whole pot. And I'm writing notes, and finally lunchtime's done, and Brian walks in, and I tell him the story. And I get done telling him about the ravens, and Brian just says, he just never makes any expression. He just listens to the story, he weighs everything, he chooses his words very carefully. And he says, I know what the ravens were saying. And I said, really? He said, yeah, I know what they were saying. I said, what? He was saying, get back in there, champ, you got a gun, you can take him, he takes all our food, he won't let us have anything, and then he buries it, get on back in there, champ. It's nice to have a guy like that in camp. All right. I got charged by a black bear. You probably read about that. I had no gun, no bear spray. My buddies floated off with the raft. We're coming down the same valley. A bunch of caribou had come through earlier, and they were all gone. So I just took a shortcut. My buddies following the turn of the rivers, and my knee was swelling pretty bad. So I just took my pack with my cameras and stuff and went over the ridge, dropped down to the other side. I get down to the other side, cross about a 30-foot patch of water in knee-high water there, get on the other side, I walk up toward, there's a sweeper so he couldn't get through there. I get up to a gravel bar, and I see something out of the corner of my eye, and I turn back and look, and a big black bear drops down off the bank, crosses exactly where I just crossed, going downstream. And I said, oh goodness, a black bear. And he gets on the other side, and he stops, and he turns around, and he looks, and he sees me standing there. And he does this number, and then all of a sudden, I said, you better say something to that. It's a black bear, but you better say something, let him know you're not a caribou. And so I said, hey bear! I wouldn't suggest saying that. They tell you to do that, but every time I do, something's coming. When I said, hey bear, that bear laid his ears back, and he charged across it. He hit that water, and it was beautiful. That shiny black bear, and every time he'd hit the water would spray. And I thought about when I used to water ski, and I thought I was so tough. And here he comes across that thing, and it dawned on me just about that time that I didn't have a gun or bear spray or anything. And I don't care if it's a black bear. It doesn't, when they bury you, it doesn't matter which one got you. But he's coming. And I looked around, and I says, you got to do something. And I reached down, I got a rock about this big in each hand, and I put my hands up as high as I could, and I charged the bear. I mean, I didn't have any other choice. And so I'm running at this bear. That's where I got the idea to do that on that grizzly. I'm running at him, and at about 25 yards, he's just coming out of the water, and I stopped and threw the first rock, and it clacked and ran up to him pretty close. And I said, get out of here! And I threw the other rock. And finally he got the message that caribou don't throw rocks. So he turned around and loped off. So, sow and cubs, I've been between them. That's not a fun experience either. And fortunately, 3 bears, 42 years of tree work, and I've got no scratches. Lord, thank you. Let's go on to, all right, here's that is a very large, that's a 10.5 foot, standing flat foot, he's 10.5 feet to the top of the head. That's a nice brown bear. That's my buddy Bob Nancaro from Michigan. He went up the Arctic, and he was rifle hunting. He shot this polar bear, but he's 22 miles out. Now, as far as dangerous game, this is probably as dangerous as it gets. Polar bears they get big for one thing, and they're super fast, and they are major predators. A person, they will run from you, but most times they won't. And they've had a number of problems up there, but Bob's out. Now imagine this, you're 22 miles out on the ice, you've got a dog sled, because they have to do these hunts from dog sleds. The guy has a snowmobile, his brother had gotten killed up there, ran off in one of the leads. Well, now there's a storm on the Beaufort Sea, and the ice is raising and dropping down. Imagine the waves coming under that ice, and that ice is coming up and down. It's breaking apart in open leads. Bob sees this bear. He had the sled had turned over during the storm the day before, hit a chunk of ice, turned over. His rifle barrel had gone into the snow and packed snow in the rifle barrel. He had shot at a bear that day. It bulged the barrel. He didn't know it. And so when he shoots at this bear, he missed him. And Bob never has enough ammunition. He's a good shot. He just shoots, well, two rounds ought to be enough. Maybe 3. So he shoots at this bear and misses it. Then he tries to get behind some ice and he gets closer, and this bear is out on across an open lead on ice, and the ice is popping and cracking and shoving up in this storm. He finally shoots this bear at about 70 yards, hits it in the gut. Now he knows where the rifle's hitting, so he holds off. He had to crawl all the way up there. He said, I thought about you, Brown, and I'm going to get closer. I'm just going to get closer so I know I can hit him. And he crawls up to where he knew he could hit him, and he shot him and killed him. Now the bear's laying there. Bob goes up there. It's obvious that the ice is raising and falling, and this is a very dangerous situation. He takes his knives out, his pack, jumps the open lead, probably 4 or 5 feet of open water. He jumps over that to where the bear is. Then the guy sees what's going on. He comes, he's got the dogs all tied up. He comes and he jumps the lead with a rope, and they start skinning this bear. This is probably a 1,500 pound animal. So he does a dorsal cut right on the back when the thing was on the side. And they get the hide off. Bob said he's skinning on one side, the Inuit's skinning on the other as fast as they can go, and he's fast. They get the hide off this bear, and Bob says the ice is raising up behind him and pushing him into the carcass the whole time he's skinning. And he said it's popping and cracking and groaning, and he said it was really scary. And just as they get the hide, they throw the rope across, they both jump across, pull the hide through the open water lead onto the other side, and that entire piece of ice just upended and turned over, and the bear and everything went under. That's how close he was to losing it. For moose hunters, that's what 750 pounds of moose meat looks like on a gravel bar. That was the moose I killed in 2008. My buddy Bob did all the cutting. I packed all the meat down to the gravel bar, and we covered it up, and then had to go get a raft, take it a mile above camp, float it back to camp, and then float it 6 miles back down to where Brian was hunting. That is a classic bear bait. All right, that's a 44 Magnum pistol. That and a can of bear spray. I still say that the bear spray is better. If you fire that pistol and hit that bear and hurt him, the chances, unless you're an extremely good big bore pistol shooter at moving targets, I wouldn't recommend shooting that bear. It's illegal to shoot him anyway unless he's trying to kill you, and you're going to have to prove that to the wildlife officers. And the pistol will get you in more trouble than the bear spray, unless you get killed. Then they'll give you a pass. All right, the one underneath that's a 500 Smith & Wesson with a 500 grain projectile there. That's a bear gun, if you can hire somebody to carry it for you. The one I have has an 8 3/8 inch barrel, and it is extremely heavy. You couldn't pay me to carry that pistol to Alaska, because I leave them in the tent most of the time anyway. But that's an actual bear gun there, if you want to carry one. That's the difference between a 44 Magnum and a 500 Smith & Wesson. You have over twice the muzzle energy on the 500 Smith & Wesson. This is the Wyoming guide, Mark Uptain. He was killed, 2 years ago. Guy from Florida shot an elk. They found it the next day. Mark went in, and they'd already taken the quarters off. And a grizzly sow and her cub came up and attacked them. The hunter cut and ran. And we still don't understand that story at all. And Mark was killed. And they said he did spray that bear. There was evidence when they went and killed the bear. The wildlife officials, they said he had sprayed the bear, but they don't know how much he got on it. So now, bison, you know, dangerous game. Call it what you will. You know, a big bison bull, even on a ranch out west. This is what this was. And I was just starting to shoot that 90-pound bow and 1,500 grain arrows, and I shot a snuffer tip 1,500 grain arrow completely through both lungs and out the side, and that bison dropped. Well, he probably went 15 yards. That was one a guy hit. The guy was going to shoot with a rifle. He shot it and hit the hump, the top of the hump, blew dust off the top of the hump. And so Michael Grossi, the guy, took a 25-06. The thing turned head on, and the guy, the hunter, started screaming, "Shoot him, shoot him, shoot him!" So Mike shot, and the thing fell like it was dead. But all he did, he hit the base of the horn, and the impact from hitting that base of the horn and ricocheting out knocked the buffalo unconscious. So here's a bison laying on the ground, and I'd already been given permission from the little guy from Texas to try arrow penetration on him. So I said, "Can I shoot him?" And he said, "Go get him, boy." So I went running off the hill without a horse, and I ran up to it about 20 yards, put an arrow into it. He was coming to, and he's trying to get up, and the rancher was riding around with a rifle in his hand, one hand. The horse is dancing around, and the rancher is screaming, "Don't get close to him, he'll kill you, he'll kill you." And so I ran up, and as soon as he stood up, I put an arrow right through both lungs, and it killed him dead as a hammer. It's amazing how fast an arrow will kill an animal. Musk ox this was in the high Arctic. That was, we figured, we didn't have an actual thermometer, but we started out in 40 below zero sunny weather. This was a 20-mile-an-hour wind, total fog out, and it was brutally cold. We figured it was somewhere close to 60 below zero. I said in the story that it was 40 below, but I'm telling you, that's cold. That's very, very cold. Shot those with an 82-pound Osage longbow with wood arrows. And when you get close to these animals, they will charge you, and they kill, you know, locals up there on a fairly, you know, maybe one a year that gets too close to them. My buddy got charged. He shot one with a rifle, and it dropped. The other one wouldn't leave, so he starts throwing chunks of ice because he ran out of ammunition again. And I'm telling you, this is an issue with this boy. And so that thing, the other one charged him, and it's coming, head down, it's coming. The Inuit saw it, came roaring down with a snow machine and cut him off just at the last second, because my buddy's standing behind the carcass of this other one throwing ice at this one. So he just barely missed him. It wasn't a long shot. Australian buffalo, that's a 2,000-pound animal. They're very similar to Cape buffalo. They're not nearly as tough as Cape buffalo, but I would actually say that Australian buffalo can be more aggressive than a Cape buffalo in Africa. Because I've chased Cape buffalo. I've heard more stories about the Cape buffalo than I have. The Australian buffalo causing problems once they're wounded than Cape buffalo. And I have watched Cape buffalo that was shot with a rifle. I watched that animal go down, follow the herd. The herd went around a little hill. The bull turned around behind a big green bush and turned back and faced us and was standing there waiting on us. And the professional hunter says, "Look at this one now. He's waiting for us." And I said, "Well, let's go get him." You know, don't keep him waiting. And it was standing there looking at it. He says, "Let's give him just a moment." And all of a sudden, he just goes, fell over dead. You know, shot through the heart. Cape buffalo is one of my most favorite animals to hunt after moose. Cape buffalo are just amazing animals. They'll weigh up to 2,000 pounds. If you've never, well, a guy told me the other day, I think it was here yesterday, he said he saw a mounted Cape buffalo in one of these museums. He said they're not about that high, but they're about that wide. And if you're laying on your stomach 15 yards from one, I promise you he looks taller than that. And the professional hunters over there, some of you have read the stories. I really enjoy chasing them. When they run off, something in me just clicks, and I end up chasing them. And I've chased a lot of them. So that one was the one we killed at 10 yards. We can't tell that story because we're going to run out of time. But part of the dangerous part of Cape buffalo hunting, and I was doing it in Mozambique. This is totally wild country. I started hunting them in 1990, and these were part of Felimo's army. Annie's going to have a little bit of a story about that tomorrow, I think, but I tend to leave people in the bush sometimes. But these guys came out. This was a funny story. We're out, and we were driving the Land Cruiser. We're going buffalo hunting that afternoon. We've seen these guys. They kidnapped some of the locals from the villages, and that's their induction into Felimo's army. You either get shot or you join the army. And so they were taking these guys back. So there was quite a few of them. And we had passed them. They're not bothering us, but we passed them. So we get up here and we flushed some guinea fowl. Well, we had a 12-gauge shotgun in the Land Cruiser. So I said, give me the shotgun. So I grabbed the shotgun and it's in a grassy open area, and all of a sudden one of them got up. And I just went, boom! Boy, it looks like somebody had shot a feather pillow. Just feathers everywhere. That thing fell, boom, hit the ground. I saw something out of the corner of my eye, and I turned, and these two guys stepped out. And they're pointing at the feathers floating in the air up there. I'm really glad I hit that thing. So anyway, they walk up, and they're all smiles. So I asked them, through the trackers, if I could take their picture. And you see how proud they are of their weapons. You lost that. That's okay. Where are we? No. It's a small elephant. There it is. That's a big elephant. I took this picture. Elephants, they're like a lot of animals. If when they charge, they put the ears back. And then they'll flap them when they come to look bigger. If they're charging me, they don't look bigger. This one's just walking toward us. And so I just waited until his ears were out. I've stalked up to these things. I couldn't afford to shoot a $50,000 elephant, when I'm on like a $3,000 budget. So anyway, we found a blood trail. We tracked it down, saw this elephant standing about 40 yards, and I got up to 20 yards just to prove I could get that close to it. But the thing about an elephant is when they're in brush, they are so big that they're almost invisible. It's the weirdest thing. We were actually 40 yards from that thing, and I couldn't see it. And the guy says, you'll see this one standing here. And I says, no, I don't. He says, you see this tree and just this tree. You see this gray thing? I said, yes. He says, that's an elephant. It was like, okay, let's go up there. Cape buffalo they're neat animals. You can make them so mad that they'll start growling. Brian and I we both heard bull moose. You get them mad, work them up with fake antlers and stuff. I'm sure Mike Mitten's seen them do this too. They'll actually growl the same way a Cape buffalo will. It's just a deep guttural, and it's so primeval to hear that. It just makes something resonate in your chest. It just makes you want to get close to it. Closer. What's this? Yeah. This is one I shot that I chased down and caught him on the third hill. There was probably a dozen of those bulls together, and they were laying down about middle of the day. We've been following these things since first gray light, and finally they're up on a little knoll and some mopane trees, and the tracker's pointing. He could see something dark up there, so he's pointing at it, and he says, "Yeah, the buffalo, they're right up there." So I finally talked him into letting me go up there by myself. So I get up there, make a big circle, get the wind right, and I get up there and I get on my hands and knees, and I'm crawling. I've got that 90-pound longbow, and I'm crawling along there, and I'm just keeping my chin right in the sand, just pushing with my toes. And I get up to about 25 yards, and I don't know how many there are, but at 25 yards, there's just a little bit of grass and little mopani trees. And there's a line of Diospirus trees, and that, ironically, is one of their best bowwoods over there. And they're all about this big around, maybe 2-3 inch. And there's a whole row like jail bars, and there must be 6 bulls laying there. And there's one right at the edge, and so I crawl a little bit closer, and I'm thinking, now what? You know, if I stand up, something's going to happen. I can't back up. And finally, I thought about it a little bit, and I thought about that old Civil War saying, if you're outnumbered, charge. You know, just catch them off guard. And so I'm about to do something. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do something. And all of a sudden, something out of my right eye, I see something move. And there's a big buffalo bull about 15, 20 yards away. He's behind a mopani tree head on, and I hadn't even seen him. And he just does this number, and he's looking at whatever it is crawling up there, and it's just like, and I thought, well, that's not good. Because getting up off of your stomach is not the fastest thing you can do. And you don't know where the last tree was that you could climb anyway, and they're very fast. But finally, I didn't move, and finally he just eased his head back, and he turned around and walked away. So I got to thinking about these others again, and I said, I'm going to do something. If I stand up, they'll jump up, and then they'll step out, and I'll have an open shot, at least one of them. And so I got an arrow on the string, and I said, all right, Monty Browning from Central South Carolina, you're a long way from home. You better do something. So I stood up, and they jumped up and wheeled and ran. And something clicked, and I took off running after them. And I'm just running in those little gum sole shoes. And you, how many of you have chased 26 buffalo before? Oh, we got more grizzly bear hunters. Yeah. It's thrilling. If you ever get the chance to go, they may throw you out of camp, but you get a chance to chase a herd of Cape buffalo, you really should try that because it is cool. So I'm running after these things, and everybody as far as the wall in front of me back there, and the dust and the noise is amazing. And they jump through the thorns, and I jump through the thorns, and I'm getting all cut up and scratched up, and they're just running and having a good time. And I chased him over one hill and up another one. They'd stop, and I get ready to pull back, and I can't pick out which one I'm supposed to shoot, and then they'd take off again. Now I'm getting really mad. And about the third hill, they stopped, and one of the ones I thought I wanted, he turns to go again, and I said, this is South Texas heart shot right here. I'll just run this arrow, that 90-pound bow. I'll just go from the hind quarter all the way to the front. And I shot. Well, that maybe was a bad decision. But you make decisions in the heat of battle there, you got to do something. So anyway, he took off running. The next thing I know, just as they're going over a hill, I hear Angelo, my professional hunter, coming. When I look, he's about this high off the ground, jumping over a bush. He's got the .458. He slides to a stop. He said, did you hit one? And I could see the blood on the back end of that one. I said, that one. Boom! Well, it's not a bow hunt any longer. And I didn't know if he had hit it or not. But anyway, we ran and chased that thing till they went out of hearing. And for the rest of the afternoon, I used a long bow and his rifle barrel. We'd peek under brush to see up under this stuff where these thickets were to see if there was any eyes looking back. That's a nerve-wracking afternoon when you got a wounded animal. I don't know how bad I know my arrow knocked, vanished in there. So I got a dying bull, but I don't know what else is going to happen. About 3 o'clock, 3:30, 4, something like that, he jumped up in front of us, and Angelo started shooting. He was on one side of the ditch, and I was over here. And he jumped up, and I asked him if he wanted me to shoot it, because the bow hunt's over. Anyway, it took off running. He started shooting. I ran after it, tripped on something, hit my head on that hard ground. Let me tell you something, it knocked arrows out of my quiver. But I just like you're unconscious for a second. You wake up, boom, I heard him shoot again. I said, man, you're missing the fight. And I jumped up, and I'm trying to wipe the blood and the sweat off and chased down again. And he shot he had 10 rounds when we started that morning, and he used the last one. I don't know how many times he missed this thing. He used the last one, and he broke his neck at about 45, 50 yards. And I got so excited, I had a little pocket camera, and I ran, and I got up on him quicker than I thought. I ended up having to jump over this buffalo, but he's still alive, trying to get up. And I got a picture of that eye, the look in that eye right there before he died. You talk about total respect for an animal. That is amazing. But that's Angelos. We're going into there's some buffalo out there. If you'll notice, one of the things I noticed is that we're going out there and I'm going to stalk these buffalo, and there are no trees out there. So there's no place to hide. It didn't turn into anything, but it was a great experience. Moose. Brian's been charged by a bull moose before. During the mating season, you make a bull mad. He came back to camp that one day. Well, he called on the radio after he shot this bull, and he said, I got charged twice. And I said, yeah, and the pilot's going to charge you twice too. But it's one thing to see a moose out there and put an arrow in. It's totally different. Mike Mitten, when it's coming at you, and I haven't actually had a moose charge me, but Brian has, and it got his attention. Mike Mitten had a friend gored by a bull on one of his moose hunts. So they can be very dangerous. And that's where we work. We work close with traditional stuff. Mountain lions, that's an interesting one. I don't know of any bow hunter that's ever gotten mauled by a mountain lion, because usually there's a pack of dogs running them up a tree. And I didn't hunt mountain lions for a lot of years for that reason. But once I went out there, that can be one of the most difficult hunts you'll ever do, most physical hunts you'll ever do. And I was fortunate enough to kill a lion after 7 days of climbing up and down mountains. And then that's the only mountain lion I have seen in my entire life in the wild. The only one. So this summer, I retired from going to Alaska, much to my regret. I'm not saying I won't come out of retirement, but I retired from Alaska after 25 Septembers in Alaska, hunting with Brian, and I killed that big bull there. So I decided to spend more time with Annie, and so we spent 80 hours in the truck this summer. So we're going out to Colorado to see Marv Klinke and do some fishing and stuff. And I thought of Bill Kistner at Compton. He said, well, they're going to be in Colorado if we're out there to stop by. So I texted him, and he said, come on out and elk hunt a little bit. So we went out there and met Bill and Jenny, and got a nice place out there, and they have a cabin, really nice cabin they let us use. And so I go out hunting, and spike bulls are not legal. And so I'm hunting I made a little brush blind, and I'm sitting there, and I actually called up a spike bull, and then he moved, and then I looked at a stump and I said, that's him right there. And then I moved again to get the video camera since I couldn't shoot it. And then I looked, and the bull's looking at me like this, and he turned around and left. So that morning, I'm sitting there, back up against a dead spruce, got my longbow, and I got a stone point. I'm going to shoot this elk with a stone point. And all of a sudden, I see something right out here, down the hill, tan, color of an elk. And I peeked up over, all camouflaged, and I peek up over the brush, and there's a mountain lion, maybe 10 yards, coming up the hill to me. Well, that caught me off guard, because that's the first live one I've seen since the one I killed. And I thought, that's cool. I reached to get my video camera, but don't ever take your eyes off the game. So I reached to get the video camera, and when I pull back, now he's 15 yards, and he's looking over his shoulder back at me. And I said, that is way cool. I can't wait to tell Bill about that. So anyway, the hunt's over, and I go back to camp, and I tell Bill Kistner. He said, Monty, I've been out here 55 Septembers, and I have never seen a mountain lion. And I thought, I don't know what to say, So I go back that afternoon, and I go down there and hunt. Well, now I've seen a mountain lion at 10 yards coming up to me, and I'm sitting against an old dead spruce, a bunch of old dead branches in it. I'm sitting there, been there about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and a red squirrel jumps into that tree right behind me. Scared me a little bit. And Anyway, I'm getting to look around a little bit. So anyway, it gets dusky dark, and I said, well, it's time to go. So I get my stuff in the pack, climb the hill, get up to a big aspen thicket up there, there's some brush, and I walk over and finally get to my truck, open up the truck doors. Now in my truck, I've got a can of bear spray and 2 pistols and my bow, and I'm taking my stuff off, you know, camouflage, face net stuff, taking it off, and it's really quiet up there. Something's watching me. I can feel it. And I turned around, and 20 yards away, this mountain lion is sitting there, just looking at me. That's different. And I thought of Bill. And I said, I just happen to have my cell phone. So I pulled out my cell phone. And I said, I'm going to get a picture of this mountain. Now, Bill's not going to believe this. So I get it, zoom it in the best I can. And I said, I got it. That is so cool. And I thought, video. Oh. So I turned it on video. You're probably getting the idea that I ain't the smartest. So I get my cell phone out, and I got it on video, and I zoom it in, and I start walking. See if it'll play this. Now this mountain lion is 20 yards. So I start walking toward it with a cell phone. Didn't think about the pistols. So I get to 10 yards, and it occurs to me that I can't turn around and go back to get him. So I said to myself, man, you better start growling or doing something. I see his tail's not twitching, so I don't think he's going to jump on me.
Let's back it up.
Isn't that sweet or what?
Awesome.
Is that stupid? So I get back to the truck, and I'm walking back to the truck. He's gone. I walk back, I said, I got it. I actually got that mountain lion. You wait till I see Bill. Bill's going to love this. So I get back to the truck, and I'm watching video, and all of a sudden I said, it's back. And I turn around, and he's 20 yards over here. Now once is once. But if he comes back after I scared him off, there's something wrong with this cat. So I get my bow out. I said, well, I can't shoot him. They'll hang me if I shoot him. I'll just take the point off and use the arrow as a blunt. I'm going to hit him in the butt and let him know that that's not good, following humans up to their truck. So I walked up to him again. Without the phone this time, there's some power in that phone. So I walked up to him again, and at about 10 yards, he's getting nervous. So he turns around, and I pull back, and he jumps just as I shoot, because you know I wouldn't miss. But I shot right behind his rump into the brush. Stupid me. Well, that's a $12 arrow. So I'm up there looking. I'm looking for that arrow, and it's getting dark, and I finally said, do you really need that arrow? So I said, I'll look for that tomorrow. So I go down and get the truck, and I thought, that is way cool. Lord, thank you. Thank you. So I go down the hill, and who should come out of the forest but Bill Kistner? And so I get out of the truck, and I'm smug now. I got the film. So I walk over to him, he said, did you see anything? And I said, well, it just so happens I did. Look at this. And he looked at it, and he said, I do not believe that you saw that mountain lion. And see, that's what PBS is all about. Bill's got a place in Colorado. He's had so many people to come out there and hunt with him. He has tame mountain lions that will excite you. And he wanted me to invite everybody to his camp this year to see mountain lions. Blacktail deer, this was a hunt Brian and I were on, and my friend Wade Job there killed that blacktail with a stone point, which was very, very neat, and that was a great thing. But the only thing dangerous about that is it's not the deer, but it's the bears that live on Kodiak. So that's just one thing to be careful about. And Brian's he's had some encounters with bears there, but he's a pretty successful blacktail hunter. Yeah.
So Monty came back to camp, and he was telling me the story about shooting this blacktail. And he's like, Brian, I shot right through it with a stone point. And he's like, how cool is that? I'm like, Monty, stone points are not legal on Kodiak. He went white. And he's like, I'm going to get kicked out of PBS. I'm going to get kicked out of Congress. I'm done. And I'm like, Monty, I'm just teasing. He's
good at that. This is when I was running camps for caribou in Quebec, that's one of those 34-degree lakes. I shot a caribou with a little hickory longbow and a wood arrow. And the last blood I found was headed toward that island. Well, there's no way to get to that island, and we were 5 miles from the camp, walking, not in the boat to the camp. So my friend Richard Boss from North Carolina was there with me, and so I go to my little backpack tent that night, and I'm trying to figure out how to get to that island. So I came up with this plan. I said, all right, let's go back. I got a plan. I can get to the island. And he says, what is it? And I said, I'm not going to tell you because you won't go. So we get there, and I pull out 4 garbage bags. And we cut some little spruce trees, got spruce sinks in water, green spruce sinks. So I made a little raft, and I blew up these bags, and we tied them off with paracord, and tied them to that raft, and I pulled myself all the way over to that island, found the blood trail, and it went off the backside, and he swam away, so we figured he was okay. You didn't know how stupid I was. Alligators can be dangerous. I've killed, I'm the guy that once you put an arrow in, I pull it up and got to get it in the boat. So I've actually had to kill 6. I found out one little trick for sticking a knife right in the back of that vertebrae right behind their skull. It works pretty good if you can get them to hold still. But that's down in South Carolina. Wild pigs, that's our president of our club, Matt Schuster, with a nice boar there down in Paradise, and that's a nice hog there. Wild pigs are not dangerous unless you get a boar that actually has some teeth, and you get him cornered up. They can be dangerous, but they're not that dangerous. They are when we tell the stories. I just showed you that picture because I finally hit one in the right spot. Angle it in right there at that crease of the leg so that it goes forward to where the heart is. Let's see what else we got. That's a bush pig in Africa back in 1983. Annie will probably tell you, I've always been a loner as far as hunting. A lot of guys have their buddies that go with them. I like to go. I've always gone alone. Started hunting with my buddy Bob in Alaska, which it's a good idea to have a companion in Alaska. But whether I was going to Africa, Turkey, I just like being there by myself. Those bush pigs, the guy told me, they're coming out after dark in the moonlight. So I told him the next day, I said, you just leave me out here, don't come get me till at least an hour, 2 hours after dark. And I shot 3 in the moonlight that night. So I wanted to, is Jerry Brum in here?
No.
Yeah. And Ben Dodge. Yeah. All right. Past presidents of PBS, great guys. They've both been to our house. I've had the pleasure of cooking for both of them and slipped some things that neither one of them were accustomed to eating. But I just, every time I'm around these guys, they dig me pretty bad. So I just want to say, now Ben and Jerry are both here, but I was so disappointed that I knew Ben and Jerry were going to be here, and there's not even an ice cream booth here. If you didn't get it, ask the guy beside you. All right, we're out of time. Listen, thank you so much. Thank you for PBS. Lord, we thank you for all the folks in here, and thanks for coming.